Let's see. I think the transcript will start. Da 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 da. Okay, yeah, we're recording. Okay, great. Welcome everybody to this first interview episode. We're doing a YouTube video for those watching and a podcast for those listening. What we're going to be putting on here from Unyielding Health and Wellness is a little interview series on people living or people who are working in various careers around the country. And today it's my privilege to introduce Mr. Andrew Gibson, a longtime friend and teacher up in northern Quebec. Um, so do you want to describe a little bit about your current role or introduce yourself there, Andrew?
So I'm an elementary classroom teacher. I've been up here this is my 5th year now. In my role now, I have taught all subjects, but right now I'm focusing on math and science education because as a grade 5 teacher, we have 5 and 6 in our elementary school. That's the end of the elementary. I teach both classes, math and science, and I have a partner that does kind of social studies, English. And their idea was the past few years that because the students in high school are going to transition between so many teachers, that having, them go back and forth between some teachers for different subjects would kind of be a good idea.
Okay. So you've taught a wide array of subjects up there then.
I've taught everything as general classroom teacher, but I definitely have like a stronger focus for math and science anyway. So it was honestly at my behest 2 years ago that I asked the old administration if it was something they would consider, and they said yes.
Plunking you into science and math kind of more permanently.
Yeah, because it's kind of more things that I gravitate towards. I mean, I can teach English, but I honestly think if a teacher is more passionate about teaching a subject, they'll just do better at educating their students with it. And I feel that way about math and science. So,
yeah, certainly. Okay. Well, thanks for sharing that. Did you have anything else you want to add before we start getting into some of the questions?
no, hit me with them, buddy.
Sure. So I guess I should have also prefaced this at the start, but kind of the intention with this YouTube video or podcast is just so if you're out there listening and thinking about being a career as a teacher as your potential prospects, hopefully you'll glean some insights from our friend Andrew here and how he found himself up there in northern Quebec. Okay, so these first round of questions are really on your early life and some of your foundational learnings. So what was your upbringing like?
I'm the youngest of 3 sons. I've always been like very active in sports, other extracurriculars, just always, doing something. Playing lacrosse, football, skiing, basketball teams. Like I loved it all, and like a big part of that was through the school as well that I got to engage in these things. Towards the end of my high school career, I even got engaged into things like choir and musicals, which, thinking back on it, I wish I did more of that, but I just didn't know. I didn't run, I guess, with that crowd initially, but, I did end up really liking it. My background is my parents would always send me to, I think since I was 7, maybe, I went to summer camps. And I think that's maybe where I had the idea of wanting, like, being a teacher or someone who helps, younger or kids develop into what they want to be, help mold them, was something that was interesting to me. And I started going to this one camp called Camp Lone Cloud that's on a lake close to Halifax. It's a camp that's situated on an island that was run by Scouts Canada. It's no longer open, but a lot of people that drive by in the Halifax area, in the Fall River area, would know that that's the camp with the dragon head in the water.
Yeah.
I was there from the time I was like 8 to 14. I went there every summer, and then I started working there for 2 summers as a counselor and then a leadership counselor. So counselor was from like 7 to 11-year-olds, and then leadership was like 12, 13, 14, kind of like taking on more, well, leadership roles, like developing their communication skills, outdoor skills, things like that. And then when I was 16 and 17, those were the ages I worked there. I was going to have a senior kind of like director role when I was 18 there, more of the higher staff, but they shut down that year. So I kind of had to scramble to get another job, but it was a bit disappointing. I mean, I think it was, good in hindsight to do other things because it wasn't a great paying job. I just liked the people there and liked being there, but it kind of pushed me to do other things. That summer I ended up doing tidal bore rafting, and the next summer I did that as well. But then I kind of missed camps, so I went to go work at the Tim Hortons Foundation camp in Tatamagouche in Nova Scotia. And I did that for 2 summers. I was a counselor in English and French there. And then I was the waterfront kind of facilitator. So I took all the cabins through different kayaking, canoeing, like swimming activities, things like that. And then after I worked there, one of our bosses actually went to go work at YMCA camp in British Columbia funny enough, by a town called Gibson's. It was called Elphinstone. And he, we liked working with him so much. He was a good boss that, some people might say he poached a lot of us, but I think it was, we just wanted to go there because, Tim Hortons camp was fun, but they also didn't pay as well that the YMCA did. And it was just a much nicer location. And that was when I had kind of like a senior director role within a camp organization because I ran the waterfront there. And I think there was somewhere between like 350 to 400 kids at a time kind of coming through this camp, either if they were like...
It's quite a bit.
There. Yeah, so I had a staff that was working under me, like sailing instructors, kayaking, canoeing instructors, and lifeguards. I really enjoyed that, and I did that for summer. I was going to go back the next year, but then COVID hit, and they're like, "We're shutting the camp down." Well, shit, like, what am I going to do? So that summer I had to just stay back home, and I took more courses at university, just kind of finish up a bit earlier and get a few prerequisites for some courses that I wanted to do later, which was fine, but not nearly as fun as being at the camp. Fun. Normally I burn quite easily, but after being in the sun every day, that was the most tan I've ever been in my life.
Okay.
But then after I kind of graduated during this COVID time, I was looking at different opportunities abroad because I kind of wanted to experience a little bit more of the world, particularly South Korea I was interested in. And during my practicum in Truro, Nova Scotia, I actually met someone who had opened a private school in South Korea with another guy. And he no longer was part of that business, but he gave me the contact to reach out to his friend that still ran it. And I was talking to him for quite a while, and he was interested in me coming over there. But during that time, the South Korean government was like pretty stringent on requirements for anyone coming into the country. And I would have had to isolate for like 2.5 months.
With COVID, or like during the times of COVID.
So I couldn't do it. And then someone in the education program a year above me, while I was kind of like parsing this out, I was like, fuck, what am I going to do? Messaged me asking if there was anyone in my program that might be interested in doing education up in northern Quebec, which she had been doing for the past year. And I said, yes, me. So I applied. I had an interview maybe a week later, and they called me a couple days later and said I got it. And they said, we're going to arrange for a truck to come pick up your stuff. This happened very fast. Truck to pick up the stuff. I didn't have a lot of belongings because I just finished my degree at my parents' house. And, you know, moved up here, and I've been up here since. You know, I think it's a great place for a starting teacher to be, because they, you know, pay for your accommodations. Really, it just comes like very minuscule amount comes out of my paycheck. And there's a lot of younger teachers up here, so I have a good, you know, support group, friend group, and they pay for your flights back every so often a year and other things. But I know you have more questions for me, so I'll kind of leave a little bit more to be heard there.
Sure. Yeah. Well, thanks for giving that story there, kind of going from when you were in school and like always involved in team sports and then kind of pursuing all your interests, whether it be sports or then as in the later years into the dramatics or the arts. And then kind of all the while had this, you know, going to these camps and then increasingly, you know, over time, increasing your responsibility that you had at each of these roles over a number of years. And I imagine some of those roles were quite akin to being a teacher in a way, like teaching kids or helping them through different situations, different lessons and learnings, um, to find yourself where you are now. So along the way, along that whole journey, what challenges influenced your worldview?
Hmm. You know, I think a lot of my challenges were just sometimes it feels like regular struggle, like you have so many things piling up, but then you look back and think, well, I've come this far, I got to kind of finish it now. Um,
Mm.
but I think, you know, I don't know if it's my personal challenges that I saw it, because there's more things like interpersonally with me that, you know, it kind of molded my decision. You know, a lot of self-doubt that I had to overcome, a lot of worry about the future, if it was the right path. Just seeing how many people, you know, sometimes when you tell people they're a teacher, they're first, or they're going into education, some people are like, you're sure that's what you want to do? And I
Mm.
was like, yeah, well, I want to make sure that, you know, kids are getting a good education, and more than that, like developing into functioning adults, right? Um, and I saw, you know, I see a lot of struggles that I had with a kid, or not with a kid, as a kid, that are present in a lot of my students now. So I try to want to, you know, help them there, because a big part of being a teacher now is helping kids with their interpersonal issues and emotional development. I would say
Mm.
it's often referred to as the hidden curriculum, of
Okay.
teaching, because you have to help those kids through so many and personal situations and help guide them through it,
Mhm.
that it has nothing to do with like math,
With
science.
math or science.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with that, right?
Mhm.
Um, but though, like my struggle is seeing that as a kid, and like just seeing it reflected in a lot of my students now, would kind of be some of the challenges, um, that I was facing. I mean, one big thing that I can think of, if you want specifics, is I grew up having ADHD, and I didn't know it until I was already finished university, and I went to go get a diagnosis for myself, because I thought to myself, is it this hard for everyone? Because I found myself just being exhausted all the time, you know, drinking copious amounts of caffeine because it's a central nervous system stimulant. Um, regulate myself. Like I could pound energy drinks at the library at the university and then bed like an hour later. But I see that in a lot of kids in class too, and trying to help them through it, developing mechanisms, trying to communicate with parents and get like psychosocial or and health assessments for them to see how we can adapt things to make it easier for them. But that's something I went through not even realizing, and I think it was because I was academically successful going through school. I didn't really find it too hard until maybe like grade 11 or 12, where I absolutely started to apply myself. But I know it also presents in different ways. Like, as I mentioned, I was in a lot of sports and other things that took up my energy. And I was always a jam-packed schedule. I was very regimented, so that helped as well. Like, I'd have sports after school. In the morning in high school, I'd go work at the pool. At like 5 o'clock in the morning, I'd open up the pool. From the time I think I was 8 to when I got to high school and I switched my morning jobs, I was doing a paper route every morning, walking, getting some exercise out. And I think just that keen, or like that schedule that I had kind of helped a lot. And I brought it into university. But I see those same challenges happening with a lot of my students here. And a lot of them aren't as scheduled or have as many opportunities as I was, thankful to have. And they struggle a lot more with the regulation and, keeping up with everything.
It's almost too much free time.
Yeah. Like they need to get, the energy out or actually get assessments. And the big thing is assessments anywhere are very slow often because there's a huge list. And like usually teachers can't diagnose anything, obviously, but yeah, we know, like we have a pretty good idea. We can see the habits and traits of it. Is we don't have the medical degree to say, yeah, this is what's happening here.
Well, with what you were saying there, it kind of leads nicely into one of my next questions here is what seemingly insignificant habit, or maybe quite significant habit or routine from your early life is compounded into a major strength in your career?
I think that is just me being super, super scheduled, honestly.
Like
Because
discipline with the schedule?
Being a teacher, you are having to do so many things during the day and keeping on top of it and track of it. You have to really, section out your time to what's important, because the big reality is you will not get everything done. It's, and that's all right. For beginning teachers, it's all right that you're not getting everything done. Just make sure you get the important stuff that admin gives you a deadline for done on time. If you're a little bit behind on marking, that's all right. And first year teaching is always a struggle. Like you have to get your feet under you. I think, being a student teacher, you have the support of the other teacher, but the real test is being a first year teacher with your classroom and you're the only one in there with the students. That's kind of the real learning experience over the year. And there's a lot of lessons, because especially for first year teachers, kids will push you. They will try to get away with everything they want because they know you're new. And you don't, and it's hard to know exactly how firm you should be. You hear, as teachers, sometimes you might hear a lot, don't let the kids see you smile until Christmas, which, I don't know if that's necessarily the advice I'd give to new teachers, but it does carry some weight that if the kids aren't familiar with you from being in the school already, it's much better to be stern. But also to keep with the schedule, because you have a schedule, you hold the kids to that schedule, you are not wishy-washy with it, and they'll know what's coming
Hmm.
next. Because if you're going all over the place, it kind of really disrupts kids' rhythms. And
Yeah.
kids that have ADHD or do have autism, like having not a set schedule or not knowing what's coming next can be like it shatters their whole day, right?
It's like by you having a defined schedule and sticking to the routine, it not only helps yourself as a teacher, but then also helps the children.
Yeah, yeah, you know, and having that schedule, like showing them that it's good to have a schedule and things to do, is kind of a huge another thing, part of the hidden curriculum. Like they're seeing that they have a schedule now. It's something that they have to learn to get on board with.
Hmm.
Because I know for me personally, is like it's good to have a rest day and not do everything, but if you have so many days like that in a row where you're not doing anything, I start to feel pretty shitty about myself. I'm like, I know I don't need to be productive, but I like to do things, get my body moving, have an idea of what I'm going to do next, and not just like laze around all the time.
Yeah, kind of in like a limbo or something.
Exactly.
Would your younger self be surprised that you became a teacher?
I think probably because when I was 10, the other one thing I wanted to do, because was be a marine biologist. And I have a feeling a lot of kids want to be marine biologists because they like the ocean.
Hmm.
But I grew up with having like an old family like cottage on the water in Nova Scotia, and I spent all my summers there, or before when I wasn't at the camps. Um, and like I said, I became kind of the waterfront person at these camps too. Like I do have the affinity for the water. I was a lifeguard growing up. I taught swim lessons. I did the boat, like tidal bore rafting. I have my boating stuff now, and even up here, like I work as in the auxiliary coast guard just because I want to be on the water. It just kind of draws me.
Yeah.
But you know, now the kid that maybe 10-year-old might be shocked that we didn't do that, but I think as I got to maybe 13 or 14, it kind of shifted to that's what I wanted to do, like be a teacher, because I saw my skills in that regard.
Hmm.
Because I was always at that age, I was always good with like little kids. So
Okay. And if you could go back to that younger self, what's one piece of advice that you, based on what you've learned so far, and what would it be and why? And whether that's related to your career or your personality, what you've discovered about yourself, or what have you, take it any way you want.
I think it would be just like as I said before, is like you can do hard things. You've gotten through it before. I think my big problem when I was younger is I saw everything in front of me as a huge insurmountable challenge because I was looking at it as a whole, and
Okay.
I didn't break things down. Um, like even projects I'd see, oh geez, look at this project. I have to do all of this, and I would eventually do it. I would do it step by step. But in my mind, at the beginning, it was very anxiety inducing to just, you know, see this huge mountain in front of me, and I felt like I didn't have any climbing gear, right?
Okay.
Um, but now in my life, it's just very breaking things down into step by step makes it a lot easier. Um, and even as a young adult, like at the start of university, I felt that way. I was thinking that way, and I think it caused me a lot of undue stress because I did
Yeah.
eventually get through it all anyway.
Okay.
But
Well, you
also
put it.
that said, I did have ADHD, and I was dealing with full course load of university, and I didn't know why I felt so like my work was a lot harder than other people's. So
Mhm. It's kind of just taking things one step at a time, then like not looking at the whole mountain, just step at a time. This checkpoint, then the next checkpoint,
yeah,
little
exactly.
digestible pieces.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now we're getting into the kind of education and learning section. And some of these questions If they end up being too reiterative, we can always skip them.
Mm.
But this next one might be somewhat similar. But what key lessons did you learn in school or through self-study? Breaking things down to smaller bite-sized pieces sounds certainly like one of the biggies. Having a schedule, having a routine.
Yeah, those are definitely the big ones. Learning at school. Um, I think even with like I went through waves of wanting to procrastinate or wanting to get things done like hyper focused. But even towards the end of high school, I would have a free period and I would just always want to do my work then or just get it done because I didn't want to go home and do anything. Right. So even, in university, I would think, all right, I think not my first 2 years because that felt a little bit more hectic for me and I wasn't as scheduled. But as I went on through the years in university, I started to do things earlier and earlier. And it was, you know, it doesn't have to all get done, but if you work again, step by step, you just chip away at it. It'll be fine. Right. So hard to say to someone that has undiagnosed ADHD, but you know, you don't have to do everything the night before or the few days before,
Mhm.
because you just cause yourself more stress. And you're not really doing much anyway, besides sitting at home playing video games, which you could do after like an hour or two of work, right?
Okay. So I allude it to something I do often in my personal life where, after dinner, there might be some dishes around and I could either put them all away in the dishwasher now or most of them and kind of square up the kitchen. And then for the rest of the evening, sit around and, I get to look at the clean kitchen for the next 2 or 3 hours. Or I could not, and I could look at the dirty kitchen for the next 2 or 3 hours. And at the end of the day, it'll still take the same amount of time to clean the kitchen, but in one scenario I get to enjoy the clean kitchen for 3 hours, and then the other one I don't.
Mm-hmm.
So somewhat similar to that, like you could go home and maybe have less stress or these lingering thoughts in your mind while you're trying to relax and play video games or whatever hobbies you had because you put it in, chipped away at it half an hour of work and kind of picked away at it along the way.
Yeah, and I think that's also goes into another thing that I've developed is there's just I forget the name for it, but it's doing unenjoyable task while you're doing something you like to do, right? So now in my adult life here, like when I'm cleaning up around, all doing all my day like chores on the weekend, vacuuming, mopping, cleaning the counters, getting all the dishes done, like meal prepping, I'll just be you know blasting some tunes and singing, and it's like something that I like to do with something that I feel that I have to do. So
Mhm.
it kind of hides it, and I've done that more recently within the past year. Is I got another thing was I got a recumbent bike to sit in front of the TV, and I'll just be biking while I'm playing video games all the time because no one really likes doing that much cardio, but I will be gaming with my friends, and an hour will pass, and there'll be little puddles of sweat dripping from my elbows on there, and I wouldn't even realized it that I was biking the whole time.
Okay.
So
So yeah,
just
making a less than preferable situation as good as it can get then.
mm,
Finding some joy along the way.
yeah.
All right. Who was a major influence during your learning years or currently?
Um. See, I always found that question really hard because when I was at working at camps, there was always someone at least a couple of years older than me. I was like, oh, they're so good at this job. I respect them a lot because they're efficient and they the kids like them, but they're still following through with things and holding people like kids accountable, but having fun at the same time.
Mhm.
So I don't know. It's just been in those scenarios. Um, but I can't say I've ever had someone that I've really like idolized. One person I respect a lot is my oldest brother Alex. He's about 10 years older than me, but he's done so much with his life, and it's achieved a tremendous amount. It's really incredible to see him work. Like he was the president of the high school 10 years before I went there, 10 years before I went there. Um, and now he's, did a lot at the same university we went to, and he was like the head of the St. John's Board of Trade now, like really developed stuff, has a really good job in HR, and, seems to have a lot of stuff together, is always like willing to talk to me. We just, have a good relationship there. But
Yep.
I'm very impressed by him because he has dwarfism and chondroplasia. And, I don't think that anything like that, like anything that involved that ever stopped him because, he didn't do as many like sports. That wasn't kind of his focus growing up. But as he got older, like he started running marathons.
Oh,
And
wow.
for someone who is much shorter, it's a lot harder. Like he has to move way more to
Mhm.
finish the marathon. But so it's just impressive to see like his determination, and I sometimes think to myself like you know he would support me in doing these things. Like he would encourage me to do these things, um, and he never let self-doubt that he's never really talked to me about, but I'm sure he felt it,
Mhm.
stop him, right? So you know I don't know about like idolize, but I definitely look up to his determination, like and the qualities that he has.
Okay. Trust in himself.
Yeah, and I think that's hugely important in any job you do because like you worked hard to get there, and I think imposter syndrome can get even the most competent people. I would say imposter system or syndrome gets the most competent people more because they're smart enough to see that there's things that they can improve upon.
Mhm.
Where some people that don't feel that and could be fucking up a lot more. I think it kind of
Yeah,
goes
not
the saying where it's smart people realize how much they don't know, and like dumb people think they know everything, right?
mhm. It's that balance between like ignorance or naivety and smarts.
Exactly, because I think also if you don't have any doubt, then and you're not questioning the things that you're doing sometimes, then then there's no reflection happening, right? I don't. It's always healthy to have a little bit of doubt, just like it's healthy to have a little bit of like stress. It's kind of what
Mhm.
keeps us going, right?
Yeah, yeah, certainly. Well, so you alluded to this a bit. So like the next question, we can combine the next two. So one of them is what sparked your interest in the field? I think you spoke to already just an innate desire to help people, to help the next generation, um, to share knowledge. Uh, and then the next question after, and is there anything you'd like to add to that?
No, that's good.
The next one is describe a breakthrough moment in your early career when you first identified your current role as a good fit. So, was there a particular moment or light switch turning on where you said, you know what, I am going to be a teacher and I'll pursue that?
Hmm.
Or was it something that came upon you gradually?
Yeah, I really don't think there was a particular moment. I think it just kind of when I was reflecting back on my life experiences over the years, I said this is a good fit. And but even now, like I'm still a classroom teacher, but I don't know if that's where I'm permanently going to be. I see myself working education adjacent or in a training and teaching field. It might not be in the classroom in the future. I've done other teaching and training in teaching first aid to people that I really enjoy doing too. So I'm not stuck in a particular age group. I think, as I've gotten a bit older and I just like to educate people and see them gain knowledge. And it's a good feeling able to impart that knowledge on someone and give them the answers. And, with a lot of things, if you don't know, then you can look together. Right. But I don't think there was like some big watershed moment, like light bulb that, yeah, I got to do this. I think it was just, a gradual thing.
It's like a gradual increase of of the understanding of yourself, where you start to notice, I really like sharing information, helping other people help make the world a better place, and kind of so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know where that's going to take me. Like I said, I like the classroom teacher position. I like developing the relationships and, seeing kids grow. But I also think that there might be, more for me to do. I'm definitely interested in going back to school eventually, probably pretty soon, to see, if I can have more options. Still, probably, like I said, within an educational setting, whether that be in a school or more like a training capacity. But because it is to be said that it is an exhausting job at times, and the stress can get to a lot of people. I think what the statistic right now is that 50% of people that enter into the education career aren't there within their first 5 years. They don't stay.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think it's getting worse, especially. A lot of people will say it's changed after COVID, and it definitely has, but that's a lot of grander issues that attribute to that. But
Well, maybe this will bleed nicely into this one, but in your industry, or like as a teacher in education, um, what's a controversial opinion you hold that challenges the status quo, and how did you arrive at it?
I think it's okay for kids to struggle, because they need to. If there's no struggle happening, then there can be no growth. I think within maybe the past 10 years, and I think COVID kind of expedited this, is that we are too focused on holding a lot of kids' hands, and it's causing them to get a lot of learned helplessness. And it's one big thing that I try to break in my classroom, because you don't, as one teacher, you don't have time for like 30 kids saying they all need help at one time, and nothing will get done, right? So, and a lot of the time they do know what to do, but they're so used to having an adult like pretty much spell it out for them and do it for them, that it's just easier for them, and they're not using that struggle to try to push themselves, right? So a big thing in my classroom is like, we are going to push ourselves, right? And I know it doesn't happen a lot at other schools, but it's just unique in my situation, is that all the kids live really close. Most of them like walk. So, if they don't have finished work because they were maybe talking too much during work time, or they were slacking off, then I have after school remediation time. I'm like, hey, you're staying with me after work to do the stuff that you chose not to do during the day. And lo and behold, when it's their time after school being eaten into, they suddenly know how to do the work without much help, right? So it's kind of a habit of, hey, you could do this work during class and not stay after school for like my extra tutoring time. But some kids, it takes a while for them to learn that, but it's been kind of something I really focus on in my career, because it's a life skill too. It's they cannot go into high school and become young adults having them that mentality that people are just going to do things for them.
Hmm.
You know, so it's just that needs to be fixed, and you will hear. And I don't think that's, maybe the struggle is a little controversial opinion, but I think a lot of teachers my age, especially, and a lot of my friends up here will kind of agree with that, is that the kids, they are used, want to be used to, or maybe at home, it happens at home too, but they're so used to getting help with everything that they're not being curious, and they're not trying to solve problems for themselves. And it also reflects in critical thinking skills. So I think letting the kids struggle, letting them trying to parse it out themselves for a long time, it will work out for them, right? We're so
Hmm.
quick to jump to them when they get upset or frustrated, and you know, you got to let them, right? Because you're not doing them favors by doing everything for them.
That kind of really nicely bumps up with something I just came across. It was a great analogy in the past week. It was something like imagine a human being being like a sort of balloon, and you're trying to blow it up full of good things and world lessons, um, and into the shape of a person who's thinking and living with their values, being productive, living a good life. Um, and if there's no point and there's no struggle and there's no resistance to push against that balloon to make them look like a human being or behave like a human being, then they just end up ballooning out and look nothing at all like a human, just just like a unshapen balloon. But
Mm-hmm.
it actually requires that struggle and that resistance to kind of form that edge of the shape of who that person's going to be. And it sounds like exactly like what you're kind of the reality that you're experiencing in the classroom.
Yeah, struggles and challenges are what make us kind of who we are, like how we adapt and how we can face them, right? And now, if someone is in a constant state of struggle, then that can lead to a lot of problems. If, but I, the inverse is true. Like you're saying, if they have no struggle at all, then they're going to have problems as well.
Mhm.
And I worry for a lot of the parents now that have kids that, don't try to do anything for themselves or depend, or like, what are they going to be like in 15, 20 years? Are they going to be yelling at you from the den playing video games to get them another beer? Like, you don't want that, right? And I don't want that. So try to impart responsibility and like trying to gain, like, feel proud of their accomplishments because they haven't struggled now, right?
Mhm. On to that one, like how important is it, do you think, to pique the kids' natural curiosity for learning?
I mean, it's essential, right? But I also think it gets harder and harder because the kids are not really, it's harder and harder to maintain their interest because they're
Mhm.
so flooded with a lot of the stuff on the internet. That's such an easy access to dopamine now, is that things don't really interest them. I can give you an example from like 2 or 3 weeks ago. They were having a firefighter symposium here, and one last period I went to go take my kids to watch like the displays that they were doing. And one of them is they were getting the jaws of light to rip apart a car. And I'd never seen that before. So I was like, this is sick. This is so cool.
Yeah,
Uh, and
metal and destruction.
and the kids were like pushing each other and not even watching. They were like throwing rocks. Like, is this not cool? Like, look at this. It's being destroyed right now. But so, and it's just that if that can't hold their attention, what hope do I have to hold their attention teaching them like addition, multiplication, like long division, right? Because
Mhm.
they have no interest in that. But it's, they just they gotta learn. A
Do you
lot of
have
them
any
would.
idea?
Yeah,
Do you have
sorry,
any
go.
ideas on how that would like how to encourage them to have more curiosity towards the lessons, or improve their ability to not be distracted as easily or increase their attention span?
I think it's really hard to develop that at school. I don't think it's going to happen. I think that's more of a younger thing that they need to develop at home. And
Mhm.
I can try my hardest to make the most engaging lessons, and they still might not be engaged, right? But if their parents or the people around them in their younger life help them develop that sense of curiosity when they're really young and wanting to learn and know things, then it plays out well. Like the kids that I
Okay.
see do the most have the most success in school are the ones that are asking me questions like why, or why you want to do this,
So
or
kind of
why.
like demonstrating their curiosity, their
Yeah, yeah,
dialogue.
yeah. And that is a huge thing that happens at home. Um, it's just like when infants, they develop better if people talk to them, even if they don't know what they're saying, right?
Mhm.
Um, so it's kind of like that. If you're asking your kid questions, or when they ask you the why, and you can hit them back with, well, what do you think? Why do you think that might be? Right?
Okay.
Because I know what is the age, maybe like 3 or 4. There's a stage of development in a toddler's life where every word they say is why, because they want to know about the. And if that's encouraged instead of like squashed, then they'll continue that curiosity, right?
Mhm.
But you know, a lot of things, and like I said, it's a lot more socioeconomic, global issues that are causing this, and especially parents don't have time to be with their kids because both the parents have to work jobs to provide, right? And it's when they get home they're exhausted, so it's much easier to just throw like Instagram reels or TikTok in front of them, and the
Yeah.
kids will for 3 hours getting like 6 seconds, like ooh, 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 like all constantly, right? And it's just flooding their brain. That's the other that kind of goes with it too, is that the kids aren't curious and they don't know how to be bored either.
Mhm.
And that's a big life skill that you should be able to entertain yourself, or like be content with being bored, because not everything has to be exciting. The dopamine flood doesn't always have to be going, because then you need more and more all the time to be happy, right? um like you leave the kids in the room alone now, and I'll do this. They'll ask if they have free time. If we finish a lesson, maybe 10 minutes early, and instead of talking to each other or maybe wanting to draw or like play any of the games that I have, they immediately go to the iPads because they want to play like some flash games on Google Chrome, right?
Okay.
And because they can't be bored, they need something in front of them.
I suppose if they've been doing that and they kind of been conditioned to do that, it's easier to do that than it is to spark up a conversation with their friend or classmate or organize three or four of them together to play a card game.
100%, 100%. And it's harder and harder, because if they don't have the curiosity and they don't have, it's okay to be bored, because not every task needs to be exciting. More often than not, a lot of the things that you do is not going to be exciting, and they can't come to terms with that, then it's tough, right?
But yeah,
um
that would compound on itself.
yeah, yeah. um so those are two big things that are definitely tough to see, that are impacting. And I think those, especially, you see a lot of teachers that end up quitting are the ones that say that. And I try to help them with it, but there is times where it grates on me more than others. And you know whenever you get teachers together, I don't think you've ever heard of a bigger bitch session than a group of teachers together, because we got a lot to complain about, rightfully so. But it is, sometimes you got to talk about the positives too. Because oftentimes, as a teacher, as the little peon at the bottom of the totem pole in the school system, is that you don't have a lot of choice of doing
Mhm.
things, right? Um, And more so, it seems like another reason teachers don't want to stay is that they feel that their autonomy in a classroom is being taken away from them.
Okay. From
Um,
like middle management or like the whole district school board.
Top down, it comes top down because they want to see some sort of results, even if the teachers were already getting results. So that like, this was working for you last year, scrap it. We're going to do this now. You've been doing this for 5 years and it's been working and the kids like it. You're done with it. We're doing this now. Right. So it's just
Why do they do that?
because they want to shift things up and see if they can make things better, even if it's been working. Right. Because now that it's kind of quantitative data that drives instruction, they want to see these goals need to be met. We have to have better performance every single year, better performance. And, sometimes it just depends on the group of kids and how they were reared. Because a year of being with a teacher will not undo years of learned habits like not being curious or not being able to be bored or, again, untreated ADHD that hasn't been gotten to around yet,
Mhm.
even flagged because there's such a delay in the system of getting assessed, right?
Mhm.
So there's a lot of things. And I know this is a thing about, I know you're doing this interview to get people interested in the career. I like being a teacher. I think there's a lot of benefits about it. Obviously, I have my gripes and complaints at times, but it's also healthy to vent a good amount. But I think my situation is also more beneficial than a lot of other starting teachers. And I recognize that I'm up here and the pay is better because I'm living in an isolated place. I have a house, so I don't have to worry about rent. My only real expenditures are big food. And we get that delivered on a truck that we order from the closest town, which is like 8 hours away. Even tonight, like in an hour, I'm going to go with someone else to go pick up our food order.
Okay. So yeah, it's not all gripes then.
No, like
What's your
when I get
what's
to
your
laugh,
favorite part of the job?
when I get to laugh with the kids or just have fun with them sometimes because I can be pretty silly. And more in recent years, after I've gotten more relaxed in my role, I've kind of developed a thing where I see it more as I'm a counselor and I get to be silly, but they still know that I'm serious. And I was pretty good at that at the camps. And I think when I became a teacher, I think thought I had to lose that mentality that I couldn't be as silly or that, and the kids wouldn't respect me. But, you know, I think it works out fine for me. Like the kids know where my line is, but it takes time, right? The kids have to know your reputation. I'm fine with having a reputation as kind of a stern or stricter teacher, but I can't have fun with my kids, right? I'd rather
Mhm.
have that reputation because they know I don't mess around and they're not going to get away with a lot with me, right?
Mhm.
I also have the benefit of being a very large man and I'm scary sometimes if I need to be, right? Sometimes a look is all you got to give a kid. And I think I've got it down after a few years.
Can
But
you demonstrate that look?
it depends on what. Sometimes it's like a stare and a raised eyebrow. Sometimes it's like just like a
Is it?
look. It's hard to say
Yeah.
because unless you're a student that knows, how I'm like in class, it doesn't have the same effect. But I did get the award at our kind of teacher awards last year for having the best face. So I'm quite proud of that.
Good. With the what face? The hardest face?
For the teacher face. Because I don't like
Nice.
to yell in my classroom. I rarely yell. The only time you'll hear me yell really at school is outside because our bell doesn't work, and I'll yell at recess to go line up, and it's like all the kids in the school hear my voice and they go line up. Not even just my students. I know a buddy of mine who works at the fire hall here. He was like, "I thought you were right in the room because I heard you from like far, far away in town.
Yeah.
Your voice is carrying so far." Like, good.
Let's
I've
get
practiced.
inside.
Yeah. But no, sometimes I understand teachers are kind of forced to raise their voice like that sometimes, but if it's happening all the time, you lose your power in class, right? Because you want the kids to know you're serious, but you don't want kids to be afraid of you, right? And because that never works. Like they need to know, they'll test your limits. You got to show them that you have, like, these are your expectations, and they're going to get a look if they're not meeting them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's all I have to do, because you don't want to get into like a conversation with the kids about something bad that they're doing, because it takes up time, because they already know if I give them a look that it's something they're not supposed to be doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that develops
And
as you go in your years.
I imagine, like, if they're doing something bad too, they're probably looking at you like, did he see me? And then when they see your scowl or stern look, and they know that you saw them, like, that's probably enough then, eh? Or
Oh yeah, a lot of them
most of
won't.
the time.
A lot of them won't even try to get away with it.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, I mean, you become perceptive of your space. Like if kids are supposed to do their reading application while I'm working in small groups with other kids, and I'll look around the room, and I'll just get up and walk around just to see what they're doing on it, and I'll see a kid quickly flick back to the application. I'll grab their iPad, flip it up, and see, you're playing Sled Runner on Chrome, and they're like, no, it wasn't. That was just up. I was like, stop lying to me. I'll see you. Like, you owe me some time after school right now. And then it just, they don't want to make that mistake again. Sometimes a few of them, it takes a few times for them to learn, but again, but I'm in the privilege where the kids all walk to school and they're old enough to do it, so I can keep them for that. And it's a very common practice up here to keep kids after school, to get their work done. Yeah,
it's kind of within the school culture then.
Yes, and I know this does not work, because it's not detention per se. It's just, you didn't do it, you got to do it now. But it wouldn't work at other schools because there's bus system, there's family pickup, things like that. The kids have to go home, and it's like, I feel that it's effective because we actually have a consequence that we can administer. Now, other, I think, that are starting out, they don't have a lot of consequences they can administer. So
it's a good point.
There's no real thing, especially if there's no parent support for, like, your kid doing this. And they're just like, okay, I'll talk with them. And that talk's never going to happen.
So yeah, like in your school system, you have a little bit of agency to give a sort of like a punishment or some sort of corrective, or like a discouragement to them, that's within your power to administer. Whereas like I'm pretty sure in a lot of other school boards, it's the most you could do is call the parent and hope that the parent would then, make them set the dining table for an hour and do their homework, or you're not having Johnny over for supper tonight, or some other sort of punishment.
I mean, it's definitely a lot better than like 30 years ago. I'm not saying give you like the strap back. I think that's awful, but it's, yeah, and it just makes kids, again, it just makes kids afraid of you, right? And
Yeah.
I'd rather have respect than fear. But I do think that even within the past 10 years, it's that schools have had their teeth like taken out of them, that there's less and less, it seems, from what I see online, like parental support. Um, and that's really important, because if the kids know that there's going to be consequences at home, then they'll actually kind of smarten up. But if they're like, my parents aren't going to do shit, then there's nothing you can do. Right.
Yeah.
So it's, and this is the thing, the struggle, and like having consequences for poor actions is a necessary thing for them to develop into functioning adults. And if they never face consequences, then they'll just keep escalating their behaviors until they do something like really bad. And you see that in a lot of kids right?
Yeah, like little, you hear it all the time, like forest fires starting from just some kids. And it might just be some innocent arson. They didn't intend to light a forest on fire or light a business on fire or a car or what have you, but it does harm people and significantly damage property, and whole lives get changed just from these little things.
It's funny you say that because the forest right beside my house and my second year here was lit on fire by a bunch of grade fives that had stolen a couple cigarettes from their parents and were smoking, and it was so dry and they threw it on the ground and started a huge fire. And they obviously lied and said, oh, we were just trying to make s'mores, but then it came out no, they were smoking because they could find the proof of it. And I remember that day I was coming home from the gym, walking back home. It's like a couple-minute walk back to my house. And I see this plume of smoke like coming, and a few of my students run towards me. One of them was biking by and wasn't involved and said, oh yeah, those people started a fire. Just so matter of factly, and biked away. And then two girls that were a part of it, like later found out, come to me bawling, and I stopped them like, oh my, like, what's wrong? What's wrong? And they're just between breaths like, I need to see my parents. And I just like, all right, go. And then I see what's happening here. And luckily, like, people in the neighborhood have to get their hoses out and start spraying the line around the fire. And luckily it stopped there, but I still look outside, the trees are burnt, right? And it got so close to these people's houses. And like, man, if this caught onto my house, I don't think I could ever look at the kids the same way again. And I even had to give like a police report about it. And but because they were 11, it wasn't really a chargeable offense. But I said, okay, that's fine, because they'll probably have some other consequence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. Because there was no damage. They didn't make them do anything. No consequence for their action.
Like no
I at
litter
least
pickup for a week or something.
nothing. I
Yeah.
thought it was, oh, they're going to have to get a bunch of saplings and like replant that section of forest, which it should have been.
Mm-hmm.
But nothing. I don't even think, I think their parents got talked to. They got talked to by the police, but it's just like there's no actual thing that they have to do because they did that, right? They almost burnt down several people's houses. And because
Yeah.
there's no consequences, I don't think they realized how serious it was, because months later they were like laughing about it.
You put it there excellently though, like the struggle and like having to confront consequences and responsibilities. Yeah, that's what like shapes a functioning adult.
Yeah, yeah. Like, yeah, everyone's gonna mess up every once in a while, but as long as if that's addressed and you correct the behavior, then it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but see, the behaviors aren't being corrected often, so they get worse and worse because, well, I could go that far. Now I can go this far. Now I can go
Mm-hmm.
this far, right?
Yeah, like, where's the edge?
And it's just, when does it stop? And then now you see a lot of, not really up here, but I mean, this hasn't really happened here, but you see in other communities, like we get reports from communities like, oh, these teens were like stabbing people, or these teens robbed this little convenience store.
Mm.
Like, well, if these kids actually faced something, and
I think
like,
that happened around here in Kelowna too. A bunch of teens like went in the back of a pita pit, like in where all the vegetables are, like where the guy making the pita would be, and just smashed it all up and just
yep,
for yeah,
or like
just kind of
I don't know.
like I know we did some pranks in our day. We didn't do
Yeah,
anything
but
like that.
it was like, I can say this one, and I remember I was walking around like you were. I remember downstairs in your basement. You might have been 10, playing video games, and there was a window down into it to your house, and it was pitch
Oh
black.
yeah.
And we were walking around with some of our other friends, and I turned on the flashlight that I had, and I was like pretending to look into the window, and then you look up, you're like, huh, what, mom? And you're like, mom, dad, and then we run away. House, and your dad comes out with a hockey stick and he's like, get out of here. And we thought it was opening the place, but I'm like,
Yeah, I
I
remember that.
told your parents years later that that was me, but it was just like, that was just harmless. It was just funny, right? I wasn't
Yeah.
causing property damage. I wasn't like hurting anyone. I was just scaring you a bit. But
Yeah, that's funny.
but you know, it's the kids don't see that as just a little thing, right? Actually, I think my first year here, some of the kids were organizing like a fight club down by the river, and I'm like, Jesus, like, is someone gonna stop these kids? It was, and sometimes it's kind of put back on the school, like, what are you gonna do to talk to these kids? And we just have to put our hand up and say, well, this did not happen at school, so we are not. This is not our responsibility.
Hmm. How have relationships shaped some of your journey, like personal, romantic, familial, like the relationships with the people that have kind of been important to you along the path? How have they shaped your journey so far?
I think I've always held like friendships, especially, like, very important to me to maintain those good relationships. And I think that's part of it, is like helping kids develop their own good friendships, because like growing up, our friendship and like our guys' friendship was like such a big part of my childhood. Like, we played so many sports together, did so much stuff together. Um, and I want to see kids have a good, healthy friend group like that too. Um, I don't know about like romantic relationships that have really helped, like driven me anywhere. Um, I mean, one of my relationships was like, I wanted to come up here, the person didn't, so we're like, all right, that's it. Then, like, I don't see, like, this is a good, really good opportunity for me. I was willing to do the distance for a while until they wanted to come back, but in hindsight, it's fine. But I don't think it's really like, I didn't let that super affect my decisions. Um, my mom was a teacher for 1 year, and she taught kind of the victory lap students at high school. So she wasn't much older than them when she taught, and she never went back. This was like 40 some years ago.
Okay.
Um, so part of me was like, well, I've toughed it out longer than you. And I think that today's kids are pretty bad, like, behavior wise, probably on the same level as those kids were. So, like, part of it is a little smugness that, like, hey, I can do it, you couldn't.
Mhm.
Um, but I don't think, because no one else in my family has ever been. My aunt Estelle was a principal and a teacher for a long time, and growing up, but we didn't talk about it too often. Um, when she was moving to Truro for her health, I would see her a lot more, but that was kind of more towards her. It was nice to have her around, but that was kind of her later years.
Mhm.
There's a school in Nova Scotia, I forget where it is, that's named after my great grandfather, but he had nothing to do with education. Um, I know my mom goes there every year to give an award.
Okay.
Yeah. But, apart from that, my family really hasn't been, like, a lot of the time you'll hear generations of teachers, right? Going to
Mhm.
school, I was one of the only guys in my program, and almost all the women there, they're like, my mom was a teacher, my dad was a teacher, right? Or like, a lot of people in their families were teachers, and they wanted to go teach where they went to school and they grew up, right? And that's fine if that's what they want to do. I had a bit more, like, I wanted to see different places in the world than stay at home,
Yeah.
but I think that's because I didn't have that connection with my family, that they were also as teachers.
Mhm. And so, how did your friends come into it, or your social relationships?
It is hard because I don't see a lot of my close friends as much as possible up here. I think that would be different if someone decided to work in the city. Like, I've made different sacrifices in order to kind of live a different lifestyle that I'm more comfortable with. But
Mhm.
like, I don't think my friends were ever, because none of my close friends were also wanting to become teachers. Right?
Yeah.
I'd made good friends in my program, but it's just, none of the people that I was close with prior to this ended up becoming teachers. A lot of people that I met at summer camps become teachers. I would say at least 50% of the people that I've worked with at summer camps. Yeah. It's kind of a stepping stone career. It makes a lot of sense. And a lot of them often become like school counselors specifically too. Which I know one friend is just finishing up now doing that. But a lot of teachers from there. So I guess kind of that career and like those friendships and having the like-mindedness, but but up here, it's like up here, I'm very grateful because I've developed a lot of friendships over past years that like I've stood at the wedding of some of my friends that I've made here. I've spent like a lot of like been around for their life moments, had a lot of good times with them. And we share a lot of mentality, so it's not isolating, right? I feel like I probably wouldn't have stayed up here as long as if I didn't develop like a good support, like social network that I have here now.
Okay. Good then. So I'm guessing that kind of leads next. The next one is what values guide your decisions. So we assume, based on what you just said, that being connected socially and friendships or strong friendships, camaraderie is a value of yours.
Oh yeah, like
Feeling supported.
I feeling supported, and I just like being there for my friends, even if it's just from this far away. I hold a huge weight on friendships, right? I think that they're really important because oftentimes, and this is a lot for most people, is your friends will end up knowing you a lot better than your family ever would, right? And I don't know if that's the case for everyone, but like me growing up, my family wasn't super, super close. They weren't very like emotional. They were always busy. My dad was away working a lot of the time. And my mom was always doing something around town, volunteering a lot, like driving, like taking us to these things. So it's just, I place a lot of weight in those friendships because especially as you get older, it's just like that's your support network, right? And that's who you spend more time with, right? I will say sometimes I'm bad for it, especially like contacting friends that aren't close by. And I think it's a thing with ADHD and having object permanence is that if they're not in front of you or you don't interact with them all the time, it's not as critical to you. But in recent years, I've seen like, I think we need to talk more, or like at least reach out a bit more and see how people are doing. Because I think it's important, especially as we're getting into a different stage of our life, like entering late 20s, early 30s, that people start to have their families started and things like that, that it's good to hold on to those friendships because people can let them lapse.
Yeah. What other values guide your decisions or guide your life? Maybe choose your top three.
I think just wanting to, I'm being very compassionate, I think, and empathetic towards people, like wanting to have the best for them, whatever that means for them. I think just being there, like being someone that can help out. That's definitely one, like the friendship values. And I think I don't know if it was just me or my like some things that my parents did, but I developed like such a strong work ethic when I was younger that it continued on. And I think it's really
ambition or productivity.
Yeah, and I want my students to be ambitious too, because one of the things that I set for a lot of goals for my students is you talk about yourself so negatively, and would you ever say that about one of your friends? And it's oftentimes like, nah, they wouldn't say that. They want to encourage their friends, right? So you are your best friend. Why are you saying this about yourself? And to me, one of the biggest satisfactions as a person and as a teacher is seeing my students who come into my class at the start of the year saying, I'm too dumb, I can't do this, I'm just going to stop. And then at the end of the year, hearing none of that, and then participating more in class, and then being more encouraged. And like, it's that is probably one of the best feelings, because it hits my goals of wanting them to be ambitious, and like me pulling something more out of them that I know is there.
You're like visibly animated in saying
Yeah,
that.
no, I think it's great. Like, I'm thinking of one student right now that I'll always, and there's been a couple, but this one specifically that was like that a lot. And there's like me and their parent working together and like really pushing them, and trying to address it. That the bounds I've seen, and it plays out into their doing better in school because they don't talk about this way about themselves. The reading level has gone up. Like, it's just because they've stopped thinking about themselves in that way. And it takes a
Mhm.
lot of effort, but it's worth it, right? And I think that's a big thing as a teacher, is like developing their self-confidence into doing something, right?
So they become more in like the hidden curriculum then.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm. If you were to narrate the tendencies of human nature based on your experiences across careers and cultures, so just generally, what are humans all about? What recurring theme stands out, whether it's greed, curiosity, or something else?
I think it's a lot about connection, because whenever a student has like a specific behavior, it's because they're lacking a connection somewhere, or they're desiring a connection somewhere else. Because we always talk about attention-seeking behavior.
Mhm.
So oftentimes it's very negative, because they're doing something bad because they've learned that it will get them a connection, their attention that they so desire. Um,
Okay.
you see the students that succeed the most have a good connection with their family, and that connection is like in appreciating education, learning, like sharing their values, like imparting values onto these kids. um, but if that connection is not there, again, maybe because the parents have to work so much and they're exhausted, then that's a huge disconnect. That connection's not there, and it means that they are not going to succeed as well as their peers that have that, right? And I think you see that with a lot of people that become like, um I think it could be so easy for me to be extremely depressed up here, because it gets dark really early, especially in December. I go to work in the dark and I leave work in the dark. But
Mhm.
it's, I have connections here. I have that social, and like it keeps me kind of grounded, and it keeps me kind of like knowing that there's other people around. It's not just me. Like, I can lean on other people if I need to, which is something I've worked on as an adult too, like trusting other people to get things done, and like parsing off tasks. But it's about the connections, right? And I think that's kind of the human experience. And without the connections, there's often more of a negative outcome across the board.
Okay. Yeah, kind of right in line with we're a social species then, really hammering that point home.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I'm sure you see it in your career. I think an example I mean, you see it across the board. Like, in your career, if someone is going through a divorce, they're losing one of the biggest connections in their life, and it sunders everything about them, right? And they think that there's not anything else for them in that moment until they learn to heal, and they develop. And usually, oftentimes, the people that go away positively from that learn to strengthen other connections that they have with other people that maybe they let grown weaker in favor of the one of their previous marriage, right? And I see that with
Mhm.
kids, that if they're having, like, their parents themselves are going through divorce, they're losing that connection to the family unit, right?
Mhm.
And sometimes that takes a really long time to heal, and it comes out in attention, like wanting connections with other people, and they do that by maybe often having negative behaviors because it's worked for them, right?
Yeah, it's like the quickest ends to a means.
Yeah.
quick and normally pretty immediate. What's a typical day like for you now?
Honestly, my days go by so fast as a teacher because I'm doing all so much all the time, right? I like how fast. Sometimes it feels like the days are so short because I'm always on my toes. I'm always doing something. Even on
Mhm.
a prep periods I get, I'm so busy or doing meetings that it works for me because I have ADHD. And you'll notice counselors flock to teaching, people with ADHD flock with teaching. So many of my coworkers also have ADHD because it's always novel and it's always something new, right? You're always
Mhm.
dealing with it, but it helps our brain. Our brain thrives in chaos, right? Um, so a typical day is like either teaching, oh, this kid pushed me on the playground, dealing with that, like, hey, like come over here, like let's talk about this, or it it can be 1,000 things in my day, but I like it because I'm always busy. Now, that being said, I don't have to stay at school for lunch. Everyone goes home for lunch, and that's another thing very different about where I work. But I get an hour at lunch where I can come home. I don't have to take, I can get something out of the fridge and cook, or like I usually have my meal prep, and I don't have to sit in the school watching kids eat. I get an
Yeah.
hour to halfway through the day that I'm like, ugh. And then I can eat, lay on the couch, do whatever I want. And then I feel, I have a little burst of energy again to go back. Now,
Yeah.
teachers that don't get that privilege or have to do supervised lunch, maybe get 15 minutes of lunch, is that. But as I said before, I've sacrificed things to be up here isolated, and there's benefits to being up here too. And I would say
Yeah.
that's a big how the day is structured.
It's not like 2, 3, or 4 hour chunks.
Yeah, it's about 3 hours on either side.
Yeah.
I'm usually at school from 8:30 to 4:30.
Okay. Yeah. And then what's your evenings look like once you get off?
I usually take a bag after lunch. I pack my gym bag and like a little snack, and I take it with me to work so that I force myself to go to the gym right
Yeah.
after. Yeah, even though it's only a few minute walk home, I know if I go home and like sit down that I'm stuck there. So I've made it a habit of getting a bag and bringing it with me. And then I'll come home and like get my meal prep. I might, read a bit or go on my bike and play games. Like get clean up a bit, you know. And those days go by fast.
Yeah. There's only so many hours in the day when you throw in sleeping, full 8 hour workday. There's not a lot of
Mm.
time left. Been finding the same things once you kind of nail down a routine, it's some of the days start to bleed into the next, and yeah, it does. It starts to go by quick.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you're passionate about currently?
Uh, Currently, I mean, I love to try new recipes. I think all my things on. I don't have a lot of social media. I have Facebook because parents will message me on Facebook here, like the town runs on Facebook. But I also use it to find a lot of recipes. I think all my saved things are like high protein recipes that I always love to try. And I'll bake a bunch too. I'll make huge batches, and I like to give it to my friends here. Uh, because I'm not going to eat it all, and sometimes it will go bad by the time I do. But I like to try new things, and then they're all indebted to me for all the baked goods that I. But I like to do that. Developing that cooking skill is a huge passion of mine. Doing that in the summers here, it's kind of hard to come by materials, but I do like to do a bit of woodworking. I've made a bunch of outdoor furniture here, like a few tables, some benches, some like stands that I've cemented into the ground for hammock chairs. Like I have a very developed outdoor fireplace area. An
Cool.
axe throwing stand that I've made. I've made like other things, some stuff for indoors, like a bookshelf and like a mug holder for a wall. Some shelving. I've done. I don't think I'm great at it, but it's fun to piece things together. Um, yeah, that reading. I have a lot of plants in my home too. I like to take care of the plants, rear something. because the house I'm in right now is I'm not supposed to have any pets, and just where we are in vicinity to a vet, which is like 8 hours away, I don't really want to have a pet either because it would just cause me too much anxiety if they were going to get sick.
Hmm.
That something else. There's like outdoor activities. I mean, I am very passionate about like exercise. I think it's I've seen my father in recent years. He always exercised, but didn't take care of his health too much otherwise. So he's had a lot of issues recently, and I kind of want to avoid that. So, um,
Hmm.
just taking care of myself in that regard, just keeping healthy. I think that's about those are the big things I focus on right now.
Yeah.
Uh, or like I said, I do the Coast Guard every so often here. Like we'll get calls. Um, that's you know camping outside, especially in this time of the year. It's good.
So you found a lot of ways to spend your free time, and
Oh yeah,
enjoyably too.
there's no end to the things I love to do. Like I love the outdoors here, so it's fine.
What are your plans for the next chapter?
I've been looking, like I said, to go back to school for a bit. I'm not sure if I want to do like a curriculum and instructional design with a focus on technology or a specific educational technology degree to help like work in an educational setting and integrate technology. I'm kind of thinking that one is more preferable. Just the way I see other schools going is they're all about more and more technology, and it seems like it's going to be unavoidable. But like it could be that, but that could also help me branch out to other things if I decide that I didn't want to. So it's good to have that degree to have options open. That being
Mhm.
said, I know a lot of other places do like hiring former teachers because we're often so organized and like get shit done really. Um,
Like what kind of places? Like in
uh,
the tech
like
sector.
well, not even the tech sector, like corporate training, nonprofits. Sorry, my battery's gonna die here. Nonprofits, like those areas are huge. So said my brother, who is a big like HR hiring manager that does all these things. He's kind of said, well, you could do this, you could do that, you can do a bunch of these other things. Sorry, just a second. But that's kind of the next chapter. I was looking at that. Might probably going back to MUN because it's like good financially, and most places do not care about where you get your piece of paper from, just as long as you have the like background.
Mhm.
So, yeah, there's that. And I was thinking about my brother for years around this age also was like the head of a residence at MUN, and they give
Mhm.
you a free room and board there. I think they give you a free meal plan too. Um, that I think would be great if I could get on board with that too. And I think some of the people because I was an RA at MUN for 2 years, and they wanted me to go like after I was done being an RA. They're like, "Hey, do you want to apply for the senior RA position?" Then like a Dawn position who runs the whole house. I was like, I kind of want to do my last year just living off campus for a year. But now
Mhm.
looking back on it, that I've matured and had more experience, I think I'm really open to having that responsibility. I think it would be cool. Um, but I don't know if that's going to be next year or this like this coming year or the year after that. I'm not too sure yet. I'm going to apply this year and see. But that's kind of my goals for the next little bit now, and just see.
So you're not continuing your professional development then, continuing to
Yeah,
advance in the field, but like get more refined though, is kind of as you go on, like refining into future technologies or just technology in general, or just changing where and what you educate people on.
yeah, exactly. Like I like teaching. It doesn't have to be like in a classroom. I like helping kids too, but you know, it's very mentally exhausting at the end of the day sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you're dealing with a huge amount of like we were saying, the students not being curious, or they're not being not knowing what to do with themselves if they're bored, right? Which are very important learned skills.
All right, just a couple more questions here.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry, I've had to switch my venue here to get my.
No, if anybody's watching this deep in the video, they're very committed.
They're yeah.
How do you want to be remembered?
Jesus Christ, man, that's a huge question.
Maybe
it holds I get it. It holds to my values. I want to be someone that, is remembered for caring a lot about people, being willing to help when people are struggling, and not turning away from someone if they're having a difficult time. Right. And I think you can empathize with that too in your profession, right?
Yes, certainly. Yeah.
Right. I think that's really important. And honestly, I think it boils down to I just want to be remembered as a good person, right? And whatever that means to someone else is I don't know, but to me it's a lot of those qualities of helping people, sticking up for people, kind of not letting other people sway your opinions, doing things for yourself. Because I think I respect that a lot in people that kind of find their own way and not let others influence them too much. But yeah, I'm not writing my obituary right now, but it would include that.
Yeah.
I think.
All right, when the AI scrapes this one day, maybe you get an AI written obituary, it'll scrape this and it'll put that on it.
Yeah, I can flop on whatever. I'll be somewhere else.
Was there something about you that I didn't ask that you'd like to share?
I think for anyone listening this far, I do want to make it very apparent that I came up here because I think that it is extremely hard for beginning teachers to kind of get started in their career, because I came up here and got tenure immediately. I'm a 100% teacher. I have full benefits, right? Because they need people up here. And I was willing to make sacrifices to be up here. But a lot of our friends, or my friends that I know that are beginning teachers, are still, maybe they don't have full time after years. They're still working contract jobs and they don't know what school they're going to be at next or for how long, right? So it's a lot of anxiety there, and they're not able, especially with the pay scale for them now, they're not able to save anything because they're going towards rent and food, right? And they might be able to, and if they have a car payment, and it's just, a lot, it's such a high stress job, and that's why a lot of people don't stay in it. But it is also rewarding if you want to see these outcomes for your students. I hope the mentality changes a bit, because I think some people believe teachers are overpaid or paid during the summer, but I also know that our paychecks are spread out over the year. That's how the system works. It's not like we're getting paid for our work during the year, so our paychecks during the year aren't as big as they would be, because
No, Natasha does it she's not a teacher, but she works for the school board, and yeah, she has the option of either getting 10 months of bigger paychecks or 12 months spread out. But if you opt for the 10, it's not like you can apply for EI in the summers or anything like that, though. It is what it is.
About me though, too, is this position works for me. People starting out, I do encourage it if they want to make a bit of money and then come back and then start their career maybe somewhere else, if that's what they want. I also know there's a lot of lifetime people here that have loved their careers here.
And, I do feel valued and appreciated in this school board. There's a lot of opportunities here that people wouldn't get. They're sending me to New Zealand in November because I applied to conference. I think like one person per school in the school board got to go, and I sent an application, and now that's being paid for, and it's for an Indigenous education conference in Auckland, and I think it's going to be a good experience, and I'm really looking forward to it. But I cannot imagine that happening in another school board down south.
Yeah, it sounds like an incredible opportunity.
Yeah. So I would say for people starting off, like, don't be afraid to move, and especially because you're probably not going to get your first choice unless it's remote anyway. If you are someone that is very closely tied with your family, that's tough, but you might not be able to stay too close to them, especially if you're looking to work in the city, because that's big population centers. They're not having the teacher problems like you hear. It's more the rural areas. So if you get into a district, they might send you there first, and you're going to have to put in your years. And, if you want to do that, that's what you got to do. But it's
it's kind of
there is other paths.
Did you learn? No, go ahead.
And I'm happy with the choice. A lot of people stay up here, so.
Like, what percent of people come up, do you think, that come up and they just think, oh, I'll just come up here for a year or two and make some money and then end up staying?
There's been very little, honestly, turnover. Most of the turnover that happened last year was people retiring.
Yeah.
So I don't think too many people leave, because when you sign the contract here, they say you can leave without penalties at Christmas if you choose, like, this life isn't for you. They tell you. But a lot of people stay up here a long time. Like, they meet people up here. They've started families up here, right? A lot of people that have kids, especially, that come up here, don't want them to stay into high school, because I think they want to get their kids more adjusted to life outside of this, like, very remote community. That's not, like, it's very different from other places in the world and how the lifestyle is. So they want their kids to be exposed to different things like that.
And this is my last question, and then the next one's a challenge for the next person.
Yeah.
Did you learn anything about yourself during this interview?
I wouldn't say learn, but I think, talking to someone that doesn't really know about the lifestyle of a teacher, because more often than not, I'm only talking to teachers in my personal life and at school too, that, it helps me. Like you said yourself, you could see me getting animated when I'm talking about that, right? About the student talking better about themselves. I think that's it more reminds me that that's kind of like something that I really hold on to and, like, appreciate about this job. But I wouldn't say it's it's good to be reminded about that.
All right. Now, so you're lucky because there's none of this for you. But would you set a pay it forward challenge to the next guest to boost their involvement in their own life in some way? Or perhaps, actually, I'm going to change
is
it.
it because I know who your next guest is? So I would say that cardio is important.
Cardio? Extra cardio?
Cardio, your cardiovascular health is very important. but that's not the challenge I'm going to give them. Um,
I'm going to change the question, I think, though. So your number one value was compassion, was it not?
yeah, like, wanting my
What,
values, like the ambition and like having compassion for people, but also like challenging them, right? Because I think as a teacher, you need to have a medium, because if you're too compassionate and empathetic and just let them remain the same without challenging their own thoughts and beliefs, then it's really like there's such a thing, I think, as over compassion, and it turns into the kids just taking advantage of your being nice, right?
okay.
So what are you changing the question to?
So rather than a pay it forward challenge to boost their involvement in their own life, I'm going to add on to it based on your most prominent value that you like to uphold in the world. So, and maybe, it doesn't have to be the number one, choose between compassion, ambition,
Mm-hmm.
what have you.
Mm.
And a
I would say
challenge for the next
it's
guest
like,
to,
I would say what what are you challenging other people in your life to like improve themselves on? Um, and what could they say that about you? What do you wish people would challenge you on to improve?
what are you wishing people would challenge you on to improve?
Yeah, like what is something that you feel like you might need a kick on, like from other people to kind of make a positive change in your life? Because sometimes you need to hear it from other people that maybe they don't want to hurt, like, especially if they're your friends or your family. They don't want to hurt your feelings, but sometimes you need to hear it, because being complacent can be like as bad
Dangerous.
for you. It's dangerous for you,
Yeah.
right?
So I wrote down here, what are you wishing other people would challenge you on to make a positive change in your life?
Hmm.
Is that
Yeah,
good, or does it need adjustments?
that's exactly correct, because sometimes what you need to improve on, but sometimes people wait for others to say it to them. And if no
Mhm.
one says it to them, then they don't change. It's a bit of like, you need tough love sometimes, right? And that's a big thing as me as a teacher, is I have to challenge the kids, and I, some tough love is good sometimes.
Mhm. Perfect. That ends our little interview there, Andrew. Um,
Well, thank you
Thank
for
you for taking
having
the
me. It was
time.
great.
You're welcome. And yeah, thanks for sharing. I will shortly send you the link once I get it all uploaded and stuff. I'm going to stop the recording right now, though. All right, if you're listening so far, well, best of luck to you. You gotta be crazy to listen to us this far. I hope you gleaned some information out of it.
I think I'm going to start
Uh,
my own podcast now.
you should. It's really fun. Here, I'm gonna. Okay, stop.